Hello, my friends. I'm Sam Hardesty, a certified life coach, and welcome to the Authentic Entrepreneur Podcast. Howdy, friends. I'm so excited that you guys are tuning in to another episode here. I am so excited for today's podcast guest interview. Kim, she is absolutely fabulous. Her and I could literally talk for days. She is not only a great friend of mine, but she's also just an incredible person. So Kim Shambaugh is an intuitive, a holistic nutritionalist, and a lifestyle transformation expert. She's also a CrossFit Level 1 coach in downtown Cleveland, Ohio. Kim works as the owner and founder of Never Settle Lifestyle, a virtually based nutrition and lifestyle transformation company. Her life's work is to show others how to self-heal and transform their bodies and live through the use of practical tools. Plus, her natural intuitive gifts are there to promote a more profound sense of authenticity and empowerment. Kim has been a competitive athlete throughout her entire life, and she's no stranger to what it takes to transform mentally and physically at a high level. Kim has guided thousands of people globally to step into their highest potential and create the life they've always desired. Kim offers virtual one-on-one coaching, group coaching, workshops, online courses, and public speaking to help people discover the best ways to simply and sustainably fuel their body, mind, and soul so that they can live so many more fulfilling years of life. Kim and I talk about so many different things today, and truthfully, this is some golden nuggets. Don't hesitate to reach out to any one of us. If you guys have any additional questions that come up, let us know what you guys think. Be sure to, at the minimum, give Kim a follow. Have fun. All right. Hey, Kim, how's it going?
Hey, what's up?
Hey, nice seeing ya. So I'm so super excited to have you on the podcast. I think the listeners are going to love everything that you have to say. So I guess if you just want to open up the floor, tell us all the things about you. Pretty much just tell me your entire life story. That'd be great.
Oh my gosh. How long do we have? Okay, so I'm an intuitive, I'm a holistic nutritionist and lifestyle transformation expert, and I have quite the story. It is a bit long and involved, but I'll try to keep it as concise as possible. So it all started back. I was previously very active as a child. I played high school sports. I received college offers to go run track at different colleges. And by the time I got to college, I was just completely burnt out with fitness. And to be honest with you, I couldn't wait to not work out. I couldn't wait to not do anything. Well, as fate would have it, you go off to college, you gain a few pounds. And for the first time in my life, I felt extremely uncomfortable in my skin. And at that time, too, I started to develop food intolerances that I wasn't really sure what was going on, but my body just didn't feel good. I felt inflamed. I had a lot of brain fog and skin issues. And it ultimately led to me gaining some college weight, right? Well, basically, I decided I was going to pick up working out again. And the issue was I really didn't have any formal knowledge of how to lose weight. I had always been a very, lean kid. I was very, could eat whatever I wanted and never really put on weight. And so this was completely new to me. So I got on Google and tried to figure out what to do. And it led me down a very interesting path. So I ended up getting on MyFitnessPal, and ultimately I started to count calories. And I was like, oh, this app, which, side note, you guys, don't do this. This is the worst way to go about transforming your body. This app told me to eat 1,200 calories. Okay, well, I'm an overachiever, so I'm going to eat 800 calories a day. I'm going to run 5 miles instead of 3 miles, and I'm going to lift weights for an hour. So this cycle continued. I would severely restrict my food, and it worked until it didn't. So I got really obsessive about the results, and this cycle ultimately caused me to create a restrict binge cycle, because your body ultimately needs fuel to have you live and have you function. And so I developed a very toxic relationship with food. And at the same time, there was this dichotomy of becoming interested in nutrition. So fast forward, it ultimately led to me getting to an extremely, extremely unhealthy low body weight. I lost my menstrual cycle for 3 years, and I kind of lost touch with myself. I completely lost my spark. I lost all what felt like my vital life force. It was just gone. And I felt very unfulfilled. So I ended up going to the doctor, and I was married at the time. So I got married very young at age 20, and that is a part of this story. And ultimately, my doctor told me, hey, if you want to have kids, you're going to have to start eating more. And so I was like, okay, I need to get my menstrual cycle back. I'm going to just start eating just a little bit more. Well, the thing is, when you've restricted so heavily for so long and you start to eat more, you kind of can't stop. It's literally ingrained in us for survival, And so because I was living in this starvation mode for so long, it was a very, very heavy binge cycle that I entered in my life with eating and food. So essentially, this caused me to gain about 60 pounds within the course of about 3 or 4 months. And talk about not knowing who I was prior to that. I really didn't know who I was. I was in a body I didn't recognize. I had never been, that size before. None of my clothes fit. And I was so stubborn, and I didn't have the any support. There wasn't really resources out there, at that time to show you easily like how to do this in a healthy way, apart from like going and paying for a dietitian. And for some reason that just didn't resonate for me. So I tried to still figure it out on my own. And ultimately it led to this 10-year process of figuring it out. And this is the start of, being at my all-time low, gaining the weight, and then ultimately losing it. So this started in about like 2011 and ended finally in 2016, I would say would be my final end mark of all this with this journey. So ultimately, after I had gained all this weight, the inflammation got worse. My cycle did come back, but I felt even worse. There was just so much going on inside of my body, not to mention what was going on in my outside world. I was dealing with a unhealthy relationship in my marriage. I had a lot of trauma that, unbeknownst to me, I needed to process, and very critical people in my life. And as you'll get to know me today, you'll find I'm a very sensitive being. And so this is deeply impacting my physicality. So long story short, here we go. I ended up becoming a nutritionist. So I went back to school and I got certified through Precision Nutrition. Ultimately, I started to tap into my intuition. For the first time in my life, after being so conditioned in various ways to not think for myself, I finally started to ask myself what I wanted. And all of that began during a very, very dark moment in time. So basically, I had this overeating binge of 4 hours, and I just couldn't stop. I was in my kitchen just eating. I crushed a whole box of Kashi cereal with almond milk. And like, if you guys have ever had Kashi cereal, it's very fibrous. Not to mention, I was gluten intolerant at the time and I didn't know. So on top of all the other food that I ate, I had this whole box of Kashi cereal and I was in so much pain. So here I am, absolutely loathing myself because I'm trying to lose weight and I've betrayed myself yet again. I'm lying in pain over this yoga ball and I'm just bawling my eyes out, and my thoughts started to feel extremely hopeless. I started to get to this point of like, there's no way out of this. And just as I was about to step into a very dark thought pattern, this voice that was not mine entered my mind and said, what would it look like if you loved yourself? What would it look like if you viewed yourself the way that you view a puppy or a kitten? Every time I tell this story, I choke up at this part. So give me a sec. And it was the big awakening that I needed. I all of a sudden got pulled out of my body and I could like see myself from this divine point of view. I could see myself from my soul's essence and my true value. Ooh. And so it was at that point that I really started to ease up the guilt and shame and begin to think for myself and ask myself, what is my intuition trying to show me? You know, because if it can show me this in such a loving way, what else is in store for my life that I've been pushing away because I've been so stubborn in trying to logically figure it out by myself and also live by the means of what everyone else in my life expects of me. And that was the first time I asked myself that question. And, you know, I say it all the time. People will ask you, you know, when are you getting married? When are you having kids? But it's seldom that people ask you if you're happy. And I realized in that moment how deeply unsatisfied that I was. And it was because I was living by the means of everyone else. And so from there, I left that marriage. So this is about age 25 in 2015. From there, not too long after, I met my now husband, Kurt, and we ended up moving from Asheville, North Carolina to Cleveland, Ohio. So ultimately, he's the reason why I'm in Cleveland. And from there, my healing process started. I was able to get away from the conditioning and the trauma, you know, small t trauma, as I'll call it, that I had always known. And I was finally in a space where I could love myself fully and in a healthy relationship that also supported that. From there, I ended up creating my business, Never Settle Lifestyle. And ultimately, during that time of first starting my business, I was at home and it was my first time ever working from home. And it was really interesting because it was this weird mix of having to develop self-discipline in order to like get things done. But also it was finally, my surroundings were quiet. I was finally able to sit with my thoughts. And mind you, this is like 2016. I hadn't had the opportunity to do that yet, right? Or I'm sorry, this was about like 2019. So I had ultimately in 2016 healed those eating disorders, but I still had some deeper healing that needed to take place in about 2019 when I started the business. And so I noticed that I needed a lot of space to just kind of like process a lot of stuff that I had gone through in the past decade of my life, because I lived prior to that such a fast-paced life, because like ultimately, you know, that's what's expected of us. We're supposed to stay, you know, at top speed at all times, right? So I finally took a breath. I actually from there started to learn more about meditation. I took it very slowly. It started to take me out of my own thoughts and slow down my anxious mind. And then at that point, I got into this routine where I would meditate, and then right after that, I would just free write. And I would just let whatever come through needed to come through. And I started to witness my intuition really coming online, like what I would call my higher self starting to step in like this big sister of like, hey, this is your potential. You know, these are all the beautiful things that can happen in your life. Here's all the stuff that you've been through that are in your subconscious brain that you forgot about. And so it was this weird, like behind the scenes situation where I had to process this grief. You know, it was like this awakening that I had of, wow, my life was painted in this certain picture. But when I'm starting to be real about my experience, there was some like sense of betrayal that I had. And a lot of it was due to my conditioning and the heavy expectations that were put on me, you know, from childhood onward. So that ultimately led to me cracking back open into my intuitive gifts, which I now use in my practice. And this is something that I've had since I was a child, but had heavily suppressed it due to that conditioning. So ultimately, because of all of this, I was able to heal my eating disorders. I was able to start my business. I was able to honestly start to step fully to my potential. And that's what leads us here today.
Oh my gosh. I love all the things. So your story is very impactful, truthfully. I feel like there's a lot of aspects of your story that can resonate with so many women, and maybe not the specifics, but even a parallel experience. So I guess want to thank you for speaking into your story, and like it really means a lot. There's a lot of women listening in now probably that are thinking like, wow, maybe that's something I'm going through right now, and realizing that there is someone out there that has, we'll say for lack of better terms, gotten to the other side. They now know that like that is an option for them. Like that is a choice that they can really step into. So sharing your story is very impactful, and you know, appreciate you sharing it with us. So
Yeah, totally.
Okay, question. What sport do you find silly and have trouble understanding why others enjoy it?
Oh my gosh. Now, are we talking like a very niche, like subculture type of sport? Or are we talking like it's in the Olympics?
It can be what I'll leave it open for you.
Okay. Speed walking. I don't get it.
Wait, what?
Speed walking. There's competitive speed walking. Like, why is this a
What?
thing? Yeah. I think that the way it works is you have to have one foot on the ground at all times.
Yeah,
So
okay.
it makes you like really shifty, and like your hips go a certain way. And it's like, that's all. And I don't get it. I'm like, why?
Oh my gosh. I didn't really process that. Like, I've heard of things like that, but to know that like it's a legit sport, like that is very interesting.
Yeah. No, I'm like,
how does
all
one
right.
get into speed walking?
I don't know.
I want to know.
I guess I could sympathize if maybe you had an injury and like you were maybe a runner before. I don't know. Like, I really don't. If anybody knows, let me know.
Yeah, keep it. I would be so interested if someone like is or knows of someone that is a professional speed walker, or like maybe, you know what it actually reminds me of though is I feel like this is at every mall, but like one of our local mall, like there's so many people that come to the mall super early and just like speed walk around the whole perimeter of the inside of the mall. Like
really?
That's workout for the day, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, I've seen it once or twice when I've gone to the mall early.
I mean, whatever works for you, you know, like if you're window shopping at the same time and that's like is what motivates you.
That would be me. That'd be a very dangerous activity.
Yeah, I would get so deterred to be like, I'm just going to Sephora. I'll see you guys later.
Yeah, peace out, Girl Scout. I love that. Okay, so I have so many questions for you, and I'm so excited for all of the answers. Okay, so I guess just let's open it up big picture. Why is nutrition important for women that have a business? Like, why is it important to take care of your body and your mind?
Oh my gosh, let's start. Okay, y'all, like, I want you to think of a day that you had, and the day prior or maybe midday or something, you ate something, just really processed food, shitty food. Maybe you forgot to eat breakfast and it's like lunchtime and you have, McDonald's or something that just makes you feel icky. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
That's like a good case scenario. Worst case scenario is you drank the night before pretty heavily and you're hungover the next day. You know, what we put into our body not only affects our, you know, body fat percentage, it deeply affects our cellular health. It affects our brain health. And you're only as good as your brain if you're running a business. So it's interesting. I have personally fine tuned my nutritional preferences so much that I'm like, oh, I know I'm not going to eat this because I'm going to be on a podcast tomorrow and it's going to give me brain fog.
Mm.
Right. So apart from the vanity of body metrics, and body fat percentage, like I love to challenge people, why not eat to feel your very best, And then it's this give and take as well, your gut health and the food that you consume. It can, if it's not favorable for you, create small lesions in the gut lining and basically have those proteins leach out into your bloodstream. It crosses over into that blood-brain barrier and it causes all sorts of issues, right? And amongst, brain fog being one of them. But it's like between eating healthy foods and focusing on meal timing and portion sizes and hydrating yourself, right? Like we weren't really, unfortunately, given an owner's manual to our body. And that was a big gripe that I had. I was like, nobody taught me how to eat. Like, how can I eat to be just healthy? Not even to be lean, but just healthy. And so I was like, this is the problem that I solve for people, right? Like, if I can solve this problem, if I can show people, like, this is what a plate looks like, this is how often you can eat to support your vital energy, and like to see people totally make that change and be like, I am a different person. That's where it's at.
That's huge. Yeah, I think the moment, so I've been on my physical health journey probably about 2 or 3 years going on now, and it's just constantly recalibrating. It's okay, these are, my next steps, my next goal, my next, where I'm heading, and then you get to that point and you're like, okay, here's where I'm at now. Is there, what's, what's coming up next, kind of thing. But I say that in a way of like, the more I have recalibrated my physical fitness, like in my nutrition, my business has gotten so much better because of it. Like I have made more money. I have felt the most in alignment that I have in years. And it is really interesting. As you said, we talk so much about, do what makes you feel happy. We talk about that in the capacity of your hobbies and your business. But how often are we asking that question in the case of like our physical bodies?
Mm.
So I think that's super huge. So I guess kind of on that same note, can you speak into like the line between body love, loving the body that you're in now currently, and still wanting to improve your physical health? Like, are you
Mm.
allowed to love your body even though it may not be in alignment, but are you allowed to want something better? Like, is that okay?
I love this question. So we see in media, we see online, there are the two camps. It's
Yeah.
almost like you have to pick one, right? Like either it's only body positivity or you're trying to get stage ready for a bikini competition.
Right.
And I'm sitting here like in this in between of like, you guys, we can absolutely, and in fact it's necessary if you want to make changes, to marry the two together. I think that we shame ourselves into not allowing the dichotomy that is being human, right? Like we all have shadow sides, we have light sides, right? So like why not accept the fact that if you really do want to, let's say, drop body fat, but maybe you've been overweight your entire life and there's a huge identity thing and crisis that can come with that because it's like, I don't even know what that would look like. So it's much safer for many different reasons for people. And it's much easier to just kind of accept where you are and just stay there, right? But like when down deep inside, maybe you do want to lose body fat. And it's kind of this attitude of people that have done it of, well, must be nice for you, but this is my life, right? But here's the thing. You can do it. You guys, like if you really want that, I am here to tell you with the so very many people that I have worked with and the different people that I have worked with, if they can do it, you can do it. Okay? It's about having the right systems in place. It's about having the proper support to get you there. So go ahead and just remove that. Let's set that notion aside for a moment. So now we come back to, okay, that body love and wanting to change, but how does that even work together at all? Here's what, if people can get this, you are going to go anywhere that you want to go in terms of your physicality. It is not only a good thing, it is a necessity to love your body first and love the body that you're in right now in order to fully transform into another different version of you physically. Because let's say that, and this is what happens so often is, people are handed a meal plan, they follow the meal plan, they get the results, but they've done no deep inner work to be able to hold that new identity. Maybe they have all of the to-dos written out and they know exactly like what they need to do, but you have to be able to find happiness on some level and acceptance of yourself and self-love now, because if you don't have that now, you're going to get to that point or very close to that point, and you're still going to have that self-loathing side of you. And ultimately, like what I see a lot of times is people will get right there and then I'll understand like they haven't really fully done that work and there's still more to be done. And it's interesting because they will stop themselves just short of accomplishing the goal because in their subconscious, they don't believe that they're worthy. And then if somehow let's say that they've lost and gained weight plenty of times throughout their life, they do get there, it will be very hard and nearly impossible for that person to maintain it. These are the only clients that I have, that maybe it's so deeply ingrained and we have to go so deep into the subconscious to unpack it that like someone wouldn't maintain those results. So what you have to do is go in, work with that inner child, work with the past versions of yourself and start to reprogram that part of you that is not fully accepting of who you are, no matter where that comes from, right? Like whether somebody told you something when you were little or it's just something that you perceive from the world around you, like the source really doesn't matter. What matters is that you are able to hold yourself in a space of acceptance now. And then that way you can allow yourself to move into a physical transformation if that's what you want.
That's huge. I think it's really interesting, like the parallels. So you spoke into a lot of like you would have to change your identity to really step into that next version of yourself. And in my coaching practice, I see this a lot. There's so many women who want to grow their business, who want to have better relationships in their lives. And they, as you said, they do some of the work and then they get to this point of like, I call it the gray area, the in between. They're in between their old self and their new self. And I actually used this analogy recently on one of my Let's Starts presentations is I called it the glasses prescription. I just made it up, so it's not fancy at all. But very fun analogy. So, okay, I generally always wear glasses. I normally don't on Zoom just for glare purposes, but I pretty much always wear glasses. And I went to the eye doctor, I don't know, like a few months ago, and I hadn't been in maybe like 3 or 4 years. Okay. So, but I never really thought anything was really wrong. It's just you kind of do a checkup, every once in a while, and maybe I'd skipped a year or two on accident. And so, anyways, you go there and you sit down, and they have this like weird like glass machine thing they put in front of your face, and they like switch a bunch of toggles until you kind of say, oh yeah, no, like this, I can see these random letters perfectly clear, right? And it's really interesting because then you finally get your new glasses, you wear them, and you start driving or you go for a walk or whatever, like, holy shit, like, I didn't realize I was so blind before. I didn't realize there was such a blur. And I use this analogy because so many of the women that I coach, where they when they generally come to me, they're like, I know I want to get better. I have no clue what that looks like. I don't know how to do that. I don't know the terminologies. I just know something inside me says I want to be a better version of myself. Like, I know there's more for me, right? So we coach, and after a few months, they're like, they give off this energy of like, maybe confusion, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, they're like, I feel like I'm doing the right things, but I don't know what I'm doing, kind of energy. And this is the perfect analogy for that. So generally what happens is, so many women, let's say they're walking around with blurry vision, okay? And then they receive coaching or they start working with a nutritional coach, and their prescription, they put on new glasses and like, oh my God, I can see so clear. So when they start taking action that is out of, let's say they take those glasses off because, it's just one day. I can see, one day I can see without those glasses, and they see the blur and they're like, oh my gosh. And so the moment you know what clear vision looks like, you'll always know when you're in blurry vision.
That's such a good analogy.
Thank you. I made it up and I love it so much. But it's so true because I feel like there's so often where, like, to go back to that identity, is we're stuck in the center of like, okay, I know what it looks like to have perfect vision, and I know what it looks like, to be in blurry vision, but I want to be that clear vision. But in order to do that, I have to throw away that blurry vision pair of glasses. Then the prescription is no longer there.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's so interesting, and I love this analogy just because then it really lets us take a step back and like come out of all of our feelings and all of our thoughts and all the things, and really just take a step back and be like, oh, okay, that totally makes sense. Like, my brain is just, it's in the in-between, right? Because either way, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable staying the same because you know that you're made for more, or that you can, do better, or you want to do better, right? But then that clear version of yourself, your future version of yourself, in order to achieve that, you have to do things that are new to you. And your brain, in either capacity, does not like being uncomfortable. But what it does prefer is something known. So it's always going to choose the known uncomfortable over the unknown uncomfortable, which is so super interesting. And I love that you really like spoke into just that shift of identity. And in this capacity, like, you have to merge the two of body love and wanting something different. Like that healing practice and that just self-acceptance, I think, is so, so huge. Okay, so how does one start loving their body? Like, if the vibe is like, yeah, fuck that body, or I actually avoid it in the mirror at all costs, or, I still have clothes from high school or college and I keep, because maybe I'll lose weight and maybe, I'll fit in them. But like, it's always nitpicking at their body.
Mm.
It's never like, it's not yet even body neutrality. So like, what are some steps that kind of like, how do you start loving your body?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we talk about mirror work, right? So looking yourself in the mirror, and this is not probably going to go where you think I'm going to go with this. So when it comes to affirmations, and you say to yourself, I'm a billionaire, and you're like, down deep inside, you're like, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
That's not true. We have to find something that's a little more tangible, right? Like that we can be a little more neutral about. So it's initially not about fully saying like I love you. It's good to do it, because repetition is just going to eventually sink in. But when it comes to actually like looking yourself in the eye and having a conversation with yourself, I like to start with appreciation. So what do you appreciate about yourself? And often what I find, because I mean, if people are in a dark enough place with their relationship with their body, they won't find anything at all. And then so maybe I'll ask the question of like, what are the capabilities that your body has? Are you able to walk? Are you able to drive? Are you able to see? And so we start to then find this gratitude. It's all about gratitude at the end of the day. So self-love has to be rooted in gratitude, and that helps us to move into acceptance and then body love, right? So just simply having gratitude for, wow, my trillions of cells or however many create this symphony of work that is my body systems. I literally don't have to think about my heart pumping. How amazing is that I don't have some sort of heart condition? How amazing is it that here was my thing. This was the big thing that really helped me was, damn, I abused my body so much between starving it, putting way too much food into it, beating it down with really intense workouts, and yet it shows up for me and heals and moves forward day in and day out, no matter how much I abuse it. And that was the gratitude that I was able to step into. And I rode that wave for a while. So kind of like going back to that transitional period of going from loving yourself to transformation, there's this waiting room period that we don't really talk about. There's this pain point, we have to essentially like digest what we're stepping into and start to have those growing pains. So it takes time in meeting yourself exactly where you are, moment to moment. So that's where we begin, is with gratitude.
I love that. And I love that it is simple. It's not necessarily saying it's easy, changing your thoughts. It could be challenging, but it's simple. And I feel like that's such a beautiful first step for someone that is interested in making some changes in their life. That's super cool. So you've kind of spoken to it a couple of times, but what's it like being an intuitive? And for those that don't know necessarily what that means, or even intuition, what that means, in layman's terms, what is that, and what's it like being one?
Yeah, it's very interesting. Honestly, it is so much fun. Just, I can be so
Okay.
entertained with my own company and just functioning in the world with being an intuitive. So here's kind of what it looks like. So the way it comes through for me, if I'm picking up on something, right? Because let's be real, we all are energetic beings. We all have an energetic field to us. And, just because you cannot see it doesn't mean that it's not there. So just like Wi-Fi, just like radio waves, there are these transmissions that are kind of floating around. And time and space does not contain this energy, right? So it is very interesting because I feel like a radio receiver a lot of the times. And, it's that feeling of, and we all have intuition, you guys. This is not like specific to me. So I want to start by saying that first and foremost. When you can like step into a room and you're like, ooh, you could cut the tension with a knife in here. It's like that, but kind of all the time. I'm kind of like, oh, what's the flavor of today? Like, what is this person what's their flavor right now? And it's interesting because it doesn't come out verbatim of like, oh, so-and-so is really sad because they had a fight with their mom on the phone. Sometimes it does, but usually it's like I will feel their emotions as if they are my own. I will get certain sensations in my body if I'm supposed to pay attention to something. I'll have a message come through that it's like, it comes almost, I don't hear it audibly outside of myself, but it comes into my mind. And I know that it's not my inner voice talking, it's something greater outside of me. So it often sounds like there's no emotion behind it. It's just kind of like, hey, get out of the road, which is literally happened to me the other week. I was driving and I all of a sudden had this intuitive hit of like, you should ask for protection. And so I said a quick protection prayer, and that looks like me calling in, my higher guidance system, God, to basically put a shield of protection around me. And then I got the idea to listen to protection affirmations. So I put my earbuds in. Not 2 minutes later, I was at a red light when this was happening. I got on the interstate. A buck walks out in front of me as I'm going at least 60 miles an hour. And my arms had no control. Like it felt like it wasn't even me controlling the steering wheel. And I went, off the rumble strips, like off the road, and I missed him. And from what I could tell, he actually made it. So side note, if anybody's wondering, but it's interesting. So that's how it'll work. And then what was crazy was, and this never ceases to amaze me, but this is just how it shows up in my life constantly, is I pulled up to a red light and I am like shook. I am like, I could have easily died just then because he was like right at my driver's side.
Oh, wow.
I pulled up to this red light and I'm like, just shook, and I looked down and the car in front of me, the license plate, the last 4 digits were 1111. And I take those as, little winks from God of like, hey, you're taken care of. You just have to ask, and then within hours later, it was probably like midday. I was actually leaving our meeting for WWC and I was at a red light and I was in a totally different part of town, you guys, like 35 minutes away. This is a completely different car. Was at a red light again. Looked down, sure as shit, another license plate, and it had 4 ones at the tail end. I have goosebumps right now.
That's incredible.
And so like it's just those little bits of confirmation, so yeah, it's very interesting.
That is super fun. I love it. I love it. Okay, so how does using your intuition show up in the business world? So for you, and then I guess just for women in business naturally too, like their own intuition, how does it show up?
Oh, I love this. So first we have to kind of talk about how to sharpen your intuition, because it's this conversation of as you get an impulse, right? You have to ask, okay, what did that sound like? What did it feel like when it came through? Did it feel like fear? Did it feel like scarcity? Did it feel like lack? Did it feel like urgency of like, you're going to miss out on this if you don't take action? That's probably your ego, right? Versus intuition that is a quiet, still knowing of like, oh, you should probably create an offer on this. And it's just like, what? So you can sharpen this by cultivating a meditation practice, creating stillness. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how you do it, but you need to learn how to regulate your nervous system. So you cannot be in an activated state. You can't be anxious. You can't be depressive and have like really clear, intuitive hits come through. So I just want to say that. So that's another reason to take really good care of yourself, right? Not to say that it's impossible, but you're going to get more clear messages if you do. So what it looks like from there is, this was like really before my gifts started to really come back online. I look back even in my early 20s and just kind of how I have walked through life, and it's always been my guiding force. I always have had something greater outside of me guiding me, right? So for me, it shows up in the ways that I take action. So where it starts is I will get often just an idea, and it's not something like, oh, I saw somebody do something and I'm just going to kind of like recreate it. It's this like, oh, you should create this email drip about this and like get people excited, and then maybe create an offer around that. And then often it'll look like, you should get online right now and talk about this subject. And then sure as shit, I'll have somebody message me and be like, I was just struggling with this today.
Oh, wow.
So it often shows up with how I do or don't take action. And I'll have days where I wake up and I'm like, this is what I'm going to do today. I have this whole day planned out. Mm-hmm. And then God will have another idea. And so it'll look like either I'm having to slow down and process something that I experienced that's necessary to move me forward in another area of life. Or maybe instead I go on a hike, and so it's very interesting living this way because I just follow those intuitive hits. But what's wild is at the end of the day, everything gets done. Life gets to be a lot of fun, and something good always comes out of it. That's what it looks like.
That sounds so fun. I love all the things. Okay, so on that note, like talking about business, and just being, so like how I define being an entrepreneur is the harmonization of both your life and your business as one person. Because I don't feel like it makes sense, especially as women, to have those identities, those energetics separated. Like, I feel like we are so much better business owners, entrepreneurs, wives, mothers, daughters, sisters, whatever, when everything is together as one. Like, we can then really step into our most authentic self. So how are you currently harmonizing your life and business? And I guess to like even go into, what does your schedule look like? What systems and structures have you implemented in your life? So the nitpicks and the big.
I love this question. And this is so important, right? And this is going to look different for everybody. So what's fun is you get to create your magic formula, like I don't have kids right now. So that's like not a factor, right? So for me, first things first, the one thing that makes my business better every single day is that if I can get my ass in bed. So that is where it begins, is my nighttime routine. I tend, if I'm left unattended to, I get very excited about some sort of niche subject, and I will go off, and read a book or be on the internet until 12 at night if I am not reined in. So where it begins is I actually have a downtime setting on my phone. You guys, you can go in and do this on your phone. Go into, I think it's like under display. You can literally have all of your apps shut down and come back online at a certain time. So at 8:30, I'm like, oh, YouTube's off. Guess I'll get ready for bed. So from there, I'll like get ready for bed. I'll hang out with my husband, and I'm usually in bed by like 10 most nights, 9 o'clock if I'm going to get up really early. And so what I do is first things first, I'll wake up. If it's an earlier morning, it's usually at like 5:15, 5:30. If it's like a later, and I kind of just shift with my energy. And this is kind of how I work with my menstrual cycle as well, if I need more rest. So I'm either getting up at like 5:15 or about 7 o'clock. So basically, I always meditate. I meditate and journal first thing. Sometimes if I'm, not working out, I will spend a good hour, 2 hours just sitting and letting my intuition unfold, getting lost in kind of the mysteries of the universe, if you will, and unpacking what it is that I'm learning about myself and the world around me. So that is very much a part of, and a large part of my business, because without that self-discovery and without, learning more about my intuition and the world around me, I wouldn't be able to, show up in the way that I do. So regardless, the meditation practice is usually like 20 to 30 minutes. That clears my mind, gets me all set. I'm going to can I give you like details?
Yes, please. We want to
Okay.
know.
Okay. This is actually a question that I get a lot, because people are like, with nutrition and skincare versus like you're going to work out first thing in the morning, what do you do? Here's what I do. Okay. You don't need to eat a full meal if you're going to work out at 5:30 or 6 in the morning. Okay. The biggest thing is that you be hydrated. So prior to my meditation, will brush my teeth, and I will get a glass of water with half a lemon juice and some sea salt. So that's going to hydrate me. I don't do caffeine until about like an hour, hour and a half after waking up and like being well hydrated. So side note, that's going to really help your hormones, you guys. So meditate, and then after that, I'll do my skincare and get ready to go to the gym. So instead of doing like a full-blown skincare routine, full-blown makeup, I will do micellar water, wipe my face down, literally throw on a tinted moisturizer, a little concealer under my eyes, brow gel, like Vaseline on my eyelashes, curl my lashes, and like get the heck out the house. So it's not this, full-blown thing that I gotta like fully go through and take all this makeup off, So workout, sometimes I'll sauna if I have time, but usually I'm coming back home and let the dogs out, do breakfast, and wash my face, put makeup on, and then I'm getting ready for the day. This is usually like at 10, later mornings, maybe 11. And I'm sitting down like doing admin work. From noon until 5 is when I take clients. I'll record the podcast, things of that nature. And a few nights a week at 6:15, I will coach a CrossFit class here at a local gym in Cleveland. And on the weekends, I do not work. So that's pretty much it.
I love that. I think it's so interesting when you become an entrepreneur. Okay, so like when I first became an entrepreneur, I think I told you this story. I went from full-time corporate job to full-time entrepreneur. The first month, I did nothing but watch Netflix all day.
Right.
Because I'm like, I'm an adult. I get to do whatever I want. And the entire time, I literally just Netflixing and hanging out. And then, like, toward the end of the month, though, I'm like, okay, this is getting kind of boring, actually. Like, just doing that, doing nothing. But so it has since, hopefully and obviously, progressed to, having a schedule that really is like all about me and how I work and how I want to work. So I feel like when you can start attuning your schedule to like you personally, you get so much more done, so much more productive. So recently, and I know you've spoken into this, and this is something I personally do, is like I've shifted my schedule based around my menstrual cycle. So I pretty much I hard work for like 2 weeks out of the month, and then the third week I am pretty much more casual, I call it doing work, where I don't really have to think too hard into it. And then my menstrual cycle that week, I pretty much do nothing. Like I take the whole week off. So I schedule in that capacity. Okay, so on that note, can you tell us like about our menstrual cycles? Like what the hell does that mean and how does it affect our lives and how should we like bring that into our life? I just learned of it like 2 years ago and it has changed my entire life and my businesses. Like it's been insane.
Right? Okay, I'm so glad you brought this up. This is so important if you are a female that's listening to this, period, right? No pun intended. So, okay, let's kind of talk about the cycle in and of itself and what the energy looks like. So, day one of your cycle technically is your first day of your bleed, right? So, within that first week, it's going to look different as it does for everybody. What we kind of have to talk about before we even get into all of this is the fact that your cycle is a direct reflection in terms of how bad is the PMS, how is your flow, like what does that look like, how is your fatigue. It is a direct reflection of what your body has had to experience the whole month prior. So if you have been low on sleep, if you have been very stressed out, if you have been overworked, if your nutrition has sucked, if you have over caffeinated yourself and are caffeinating past 2 p.m., having more than like a cup of coffee, for example, a day, and I don't mean a venti, I mean like an 8-ounce cup of coffee, then you're going to have a hard time, right? So if we mitigate all that, everything is going to be easier. So that's like yet just another of the thousands of reasons why to take really good care of yourself. So let's pretend like you have an average cycle here. And then 2, side note, if you are on hormonal birth control of any kind, you are not going to have the same experience because you'll actually have, depending on what, birth control you have, a false bleed. And your hormones aren't cycling in this same way because you're not actually having a period. So the false bleed was actually put in there as sugar pills to make you feel better about yourself and that thinking that you're normal. So side note, talk to your doctor, try to get off hormonal birth control if you can. There's a lot of options. So basically, during that first week of your bleed, pay attention to what you need, right? Like exactly what you said. Don't schedule anything too crazy, stressful, or strenuous, if you can help it. Make it things that are pretty much second nature to you, that don't require a ton of energy and brain power. And eat really well. If you're supplementing with fish oil, if you're adding sea salt to your food and you're eating really high quality food that agrees with you, you're going to feel much better. Limit your caffeine, sleep, do what you got to do, have extra rest. At the end of the day, what you need to know is like, don't beat yourself up if you're tired and you have a big deadline. Guess what? Sometimes you just need to push it out. It hasn't happened a lot, but maybe about 3 times in my 4 years of business have I had to push out some sort of like Zoom call or training because I was just exhausted. You are better off if you can to push something out and people have the best of you versus showing up like hanging by a thread. And this is much easier said than done for entrepreneurs because you do have some say-so. If you are in the 9 to 5, it can be harder because you're at other people's beck and call. In my opinion, yet another reason why to work for yourself. But control what you can, let go of what you can't, and be gentle with yourself along the way. So during that second, about days 7 to about day 14, your energy is going to start to ramp up. So this is really, especially in the gym, where you're going to be, just in general, you're going to be feeling yourself, right? So get on social media, talk your face off, record those podcasts, be social, go network, and do what you can in that way. Now, as you ovulate, you're going to have a little dip in hormones. You might, depending on you, have a day or 2 of PMS-ish symptoms, and then you'll start to feel a little better. And you'll go into that luteal phase right before you start your period. And then from there, it's kind of this downhill with energy and productivity and things of that nature. So get to know your body, like track your period and start to pay attention to what works and what doesn't. Like if you had to put yourself through something and you're like, I will never do that again. And I was so exhausted. Take note. Okay. Like all day events whilst on my menstrual cycle or right beforehand are a hell no.
Not a
So
vibe.
yeah, like, and here's what is important to know is your hormones actually raise up. And then whenever you start your cycle, they drop. And that's why we kind of initially might feel better the first day or so of our period because it's like, oh, finally. So right beforehand, and then usually about 2 to 3 days in is where people will feel the worst. And your body is using a lot of resources when you're on your period. Like you need extra vitamins. So don't be afraid if you're a little hungrier to eat just a little bit more, you know, fiber dense foods, you know, think sweet potatoes, just things of that nature. So good for you. So take really good care of yourself and this whole thing's going to be easier.
I didn't realize how important our menstrual cycles were to us, like as women. And I know it sounds crazy to say that sentence even out loud because once you start like having a relationship with your cycle, you're like, how did I ignore this ever before? How was I so unaware of it ever before? But I've been doing a lot of reading and stuff, and it's like you need to honor that shit because like that is to some degree your essence is like you change literally physically hormonally like change like throughout your cycle the 30 days we'll call it, you know, like that is so important, especially as women in business. Like there's no constant, you know, I mean generally with our actions but also just with our bodies too. So the more you can like check in with yourself, the more you're able to start like putting your business in the light that you want it to be in, like taking action in the way you want it to take it in. Okay, so in kind of a paralleled way, like how could nutrition be holding people back in their life and business?
Yeah. So as we were speaking about before, and paying attention to how certain foods make you feel is very important. So a little practice that you can try if you're like, I don't really know. I don't know how food affects me. I just know I'm tired. Start to keep a food journal and every single day write down how you felt. And then write down what day of your cycle you're on too, because it is going to play hand in hand, right? And we find that, you know, if you are intolerant to something, it can take 3 to 5 days to even show up as a symptom. So that's what gets really interesting when we're talking about like elimination diets, for example. So think of it this way. If, side note, if anybody is wondering, like, what food should I experiment with removing? I always have my clients initially remove all gluten and all dairy, read ingredients, ask for, you know, what's on your meal if you're dining out, and try to remove that for 2 weeks and see how you feel. Because often the biggest, I think, takeaway that I would say of every single person I've ever worked with is to watch them realize how good they feel and how they did not realize how bad that they were feeling. It's like you can't understand how, I guess, bad it was until it gets really good. And that's what I think is very surprising for a lot of people. So you won't know unless you actually try that, right? And you actually try to eat very well. So what does it even mean to eat well? Let's talk about that. So we have to start with creating a balanced plate, you know, and I suggest starting with healthy proteins, lean proteins, and essentially focus on the size of your palm and then the thickness of your palm of your hand. No fingers, no thumb, just the palm size, right? So depending on your body size and what your needs are, you're going to need about 1 to 2 palm sizes of protein per meal. And then we add vegetables, right? So Any vegetable at all. It doesn't matter. If you like it, eat it. If you don't like it, don't eat it. So about 1 to 2 fist sizes of vegetables. And that's about roughly like 1 to 2 dry measuring cups. And that's going to help keep you full. That's going to help to really up your nutrient intake and help all those body systems that are trying so hard to do their jobs have the support they need. It's going to fight off disease. It's going to help you live longer. It's going to lessen inflammation and make everything else in your life easier and help you feel good. So we obviously have to talk about carbohydrates, and we need carbohydrates in order for our brains to function, in order to have energy, right? Now, you may eat a little more, you may eat a little less, just depending on your goals, but complex carbohydrates is what we're going for. So starchy carbohydrates, I know that, if you lived in the 90s whatsoever, this is a cardinal sin, but I promise you it's okay. So think beans, grains, potatoes, fruit, things of that nature versus simple carbs, which are sugar, processed cereals and breads and things of that nature, right? So we want 1 to 2 cupped handfuls of those complex carbohydrates to give us energy. So depending on your hunger, depending on your body size. And then the last thing we need in order to create a plate is healthy fats, right? So the fats that we want to avoid are, the vegetable oils, right? So canola oil, just the anything with trans fat, so hydrogenated oils. Start to read your ingredients on the foods that you buy, and it's going to help you like start to realize the types of fat that you might be getting, right? So safflower oil, things of that nature. So we want to opt for oils that are less high in omega-6 and more high in omega-3s. So that would be like olive oil, avocado oil, even coconut oil is a great option. So, and then you can add seeds, you can add nuts for those healthy fats, even grass-fed butter, totally fine. Even though it's like saturated fat, it's actually pretty good for you in moderation. So if we are eating a plate like this, like think of how you feel. If you like, for example, salmon, broccoli, jasmine rice, and you have grass-fed butter, and like that's your plate, think of the fullness that you experience after that meal versus going to Starbucks, getting a grande mocha, and like a cinnamon bun. 2 hours later, I don't know if you guys are like me, but I am so cranky. Like my blood sugar has crashed. I am like ready for the next meal and I don't feel satiated. Mm-hmm. So pay attention. Start to pay attention to how food is making you feel, right? And if we can focus less on dining out, focus more on cooking for ourselves, you're going to be able to create more opportunity. Like the biggest game changer that I see for people that I work with is those that make the effort to meal prep and cook at home and prepare in advance, looking at your schedule. Okay, am I going to be running around all day? Where am I going to find a healthy meal? Like a lot of times I see this constantly with entrepreneurs, you have a cup of coffee and then you don't eat anything until 2 p.m., right? Like it's not sustainable. It's not going to make you feel good. So thinking ahead, bringing food with you, having a way to heat it up, which I have tactics for that, it all matters, right? So being proactive it's more about incorporating more healthy foods in and less about totally eliminating all the unhealthy food. Because if you're eating enough of the right things and the healthy things, the unhealthy things are just going to get crowded out because you're going to be too full.
Yeah. Yes, it will. So what's the difference between a diet and intuitive eating? Like if someone works with you, like you don't say, oh, I'm putting you on a diet. Like, what are you doing? My assumption is I'm using the phrase intuitive eating, but
yeah. So that's such a good question. I don't use the term diet because what do we think of when we equate a diet to something, right? It's something that's temporary that you're going to do for 6 weeks and you're going to go right back to your bullshit, right? The people that I want to work with are the people that I want this way of eating to become a part of their regular lifestyle far after I have been able to work with them, right? So I don't call it a diet, I call it a lifestyle. And it's just about we're shifting just a little bit the amount of food that you're eating, right? So first, that's what you need to know. And then secondly is the intuitive part, right? So I know on the back end exactly how much, for example, someone would need to eat in order to lose 15 pounds based on their day-to-day activity, their current body size, their activity level. I know the macros, I know the calories on the back end, but what I want the individual to focus on is how to, be at a buffet somewhere and pick healthy options. Okay, where's the protein? Where's the veggies? Where's the complex carbs? Where's the healthy fats? And then using your hand as a measuring tool, being able to understand portion sizes. And then from there, let's say I have a recommended amount of food for this person. Let's say it's like, one palm size of protein, one cupped handful of carbs, one fist size of veggies, and one thumb size of healthy fats. And they have this on their plate, but like as they take their time and they're eating it, they realize like, oh, I'm kind of getting full, right? So here's where the intuition part comes in. We cannot, side note, be an intuitive eater if our gut health is messed up. So if you have constantly been eating sugar, if you've constantly been eating processed food, if you drink a lot of alcohol, your hunger cues are not going to be accurate, because what happens is that bad bacteria lives in our gut and it actually communicates to our brain through the vagus nerve, and it tells us, hey, you know that ice cream that's in the freezer? Like, I know it's 5 o'clock and you should be cooking dinner, but why don't you just have that? It's right there. And it is what creates our cravings versus like if you were to eat, healthy whole foods, limit the sugar, limit the processed food for like 2 weeks. That's all it takes, you guys, is like 2 weeks. Your hunger cues are going to become more accurate. Your hunger cues are going to come back online and you're going to be like, I don't really care about that anymore. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to go have this salmon and broccoli and jasmine rice. You know what I mean? So if we can get our gut health in check and then we know how to make a plate, the only job that we have from there is to create pause. So what do I mean by that? Basically, we know that it takes about 15 minutes in order for your hunger cues to kick in. So when you're hungry, when it's time to eat, it's been 4 or 5 hours since your last meal, your hunger hormones are at an all-time high, your full hormones are at a low. What they do is they shift, and they basically, your fullness hormones go up, your hunger hormones go down, and then you're satiated. So what we know is that in order to lose body fat, if you can eat to 80% full, okay, even regardless of what's on your plate, if you're eating whole foods, if you can eat to 80% full and eat full meals, no snacking between, about 4 to 5 hours apart, 3 to 4 meals a day, you will lose body fat. And the only difference in that little season of losing body fat, and you are eating intuitively, because you have what I call like the guidelines set in place and you're following them, all you have to do is once we move into maintenance, which is a very different animal, it has to be gone about a very specific way, is we just add a little bit more food. And then we keep adding just a little bit more food until you are able to maintain that new body weight. And what's cool about that is if you're able to maintain that new body weight for 2 years, that becomes the body's new set point, which is pretty damn cool.
That sounds very exciting.
Yeah.
I feel like it's just you put in that work. I feel like we get so caught up in, I have to do, like, it's very immediate. Like, I have to change everything in that moment right then. But how I view it is like, if we're talking about your lifetime, let's say you live till 100, right? And it takes you 1 year to recalibrate your relationship with food. That's 1% of your lifetime.
Exactly. Yes.
Like, it's like you're telling me you rather like not take 1% of your lifetime and struggle for 40% of it, until then you're willing to make that 1%. So I feel like when you have that nudge and like you're ready to, like, you just have this desire to, like, I'm done with my bullshit. I'm tired of being tired. I want to make those changes, stepping into that and just committing to yourself, like for your future self. I feel like that's so, so important.
Can I go
So
off on something for just a bit
totally.
with that? So if you're not really sure where you stand in all of this, like, think of how often, especially if you are over the age of, I would say, 27, if you are complaining about anything with your energy or your body being sore, being tired, whatever, it is a red flag, right? Like, we are innately designed to feel good. And like the complaining of, oh, like after your 30s, it's just all downhill. And, oh, I'm just, this hurts, that hurts. Like, I just don't even subscribe to that, and I'm sure some of you guys are like rolling your eyes right now at me, and that's fine.
It's so true.
But it's like, it's up to you, and this is very much a possibility to feel your best. So what I'm challenging everybody to do here is to ask yourself, like, how do you feel? And what can you do to make yourself feel really good? And like, why not make that the, motive instead of, oh, I deserve this ice cream because I had a really hard week. It's like, nah, like I deserve to feel really freaking good. And that's what I know actually moves the needle forward, right? It's about a very much a long-term investment versus those short-term satisfactions here. So
for sure. And I feel like that, like when you start taking your, I don't want to come off like in like this asshole vibe, but like when you take so take this with a grain of salt, but when you take your life seriously, like you realize what you're willing to just tolerate, and like the more you calibrate, the more you like come in alignment with your future self, your higher self, like you realize, like, I'm not interested in tolerating, staying up till 12 o'clock and feeling like shit in the morning.
Yeah.
I'm no longer interested in tolerating dealing with energetically draining relationships. I'm no longer tolerating the fact that I can't do one freaking pull up, or I can't do 10 push-ups in a row without panting, or, like whatever that thing is for you. But like when we start taking ourselves seriously, and I mean this with so, so much love, because like, I feel like there's this aspect of ourselves where we feel like I'm not worthy, or, well, that's for other people to earn or to have. Like, I can't, that's not something that is meant for me. And I just say this in a way of like, it is. Like, if my opinion is, if you dream of something, if you have a desire, that is your purpose in life. Like, that is for you to achieve. Like, that is you, like, that's your capability. I feel like so often we put glass ceilings on our own selves because, oh, I haven't done that before, or, well, I've never seen myself at this weight, or, well, I've always ate this thing before. And when we can really step into, that question that you've asked yourself many years ago is, what would it look like if you loved yourself? When you can really ask that question, I think it really kind of pulls the veil off all the bullshit, and it really hones into like your truest, deepest desires.
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like. So, okay.
I want to say this too, to kind of bookend all of that. Like, you guys, this doesn't come easily to me. I think some people look at me and are like, you never eat chocolate or you
Yeah.
never enjoy a glass of wine. Like, bitch, I am just as human as the next person out there. Like, I love me a good chocolate chip cookie. I love to indulge, right? So I want to put this in as well. It's not about locking yourself up and throwing away the key, and just like fully committing to this hardcore healthy lifestyle. It's about learning to indulge intelligently. But yeah, it might require you to buckle down for a little while if you need to kind of, get it together. So I want to say that as well. Like it doesn't come naturally, and it's something to cultivate like any other skill.
I think when I shifted my thought from this is a diet to this is a lifestyle change,
Mm,
it really allowed me to start making decisions for myself as like, am I getting closer to or further away from my ideal self?
yeah.
And that question like really guided so many decisions I make nowadays. Um, okay, so if someone is interested in like they're like, huh, this lady, she sounds kind of cool. Or like I'm interested in doing something with nutrition. I don't know what that looks like. But like what are some things to look for in a coach?
Oh my gosh, this is such a good question. So you're talking like primarily a nutrition coach here, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so this is my personal opinion. Go forth into the world and find what works for you, is first things first, okay? I think it's important to remind people that they need to listen to their intuition because we are all so different. And you may need something, I might not be the coach for you. And I'm totally cool with that because, like, I work with who resonates with me, right? So find somebody that you feel like is a hell yes for you, first things first. um don't let a coach ever sell you. Like, do your research and kind of creep on them for a while. Ask yourself, is what they are presenting something that I value, or does this feel so hard and out of reach that like, they're kind of making it seem unattainable, because there's such a different variety of nutrition coaches out there. I think that one of the greatest things to look for is a program that is customized to you. Please don't go out there and spend all your money on somebody that's going to just give you a regurgitated meal template. Like, please do not. And if you're not sure, like, do some research. You feel free to reach out to me. I can definitely help you figure it out. But have somebody that's going to take their time with you, that's going to get to know you, that's going to delve into the corners of your life, because so much of nutrition is what is happening outside of mealtime. It has so much to do with mindset. It has so much to do with inner healing work. And I think that, the reason I created Never Settle Lifestyle in the way that I did was because it has to be holistic. Like, we cannot avoid all these other topics that play into our relationship with food and with our body. So I know from my perspective that that is what works. I mean, I've seen just wild results that stick for people. And so obviously, like, I'm a firm believer of that. But at the end of the day, you need a coach that's going to be attentive to you, that's going to care about you and not make you like, okay, guys, biggest tip ever. I don't care if it's a money coach, I don't care if it's a business coach, whoever. If your coach makes you feel like shit about yourself, please go find someone else. There should be no space for guilt and shame, only empowerment, right? And this isn't about just like toxic positivity or something like that. Like, yeah, you're going to have to own up to some stuff. You're going to have hard conversations, but that should not ever be weaponized to make you feel less than. You should always leave a session with solutions and answers. So if you feel confused, go find somebody else, and don't be afraid to break contracts. Like, if somebody's just not working for you, you get into it and you're like, oh, this is awful, leave, ask for your money back. Yeah. So does that answer your question?
It
Anything else?
does. And I totally agree with that. Like just hiring a coach, I think something that's really important to know, especially as the coaching industry itself, like in its whole entirety, is continuing to grow. It's realizing that there isn't like, I'm trying to think of an example of like a PT, for example, a physical therapist. You generally, without even like talking to them, you know what you're going to get. You generally know, like, okay, this is my ailment. They are going to give me exercises and we're going to fix the problem, right? With coaches, I feel like it's like, okay, here's my ailment, but then you have to kind of find a coach that specializes in that ailment. And I keep saying the word ailment. I don't normally say that word, so but we'll just keep saying it because it's on top of my mind. I guess it's kind of a weird word, but whatever that thing that you're looking to improve upon, finding that coach that specializes in that. But 100% to what you said, Kim, is like that you like them. You allow your coach, like there's such a collaborative effort together, like that coach and client relationship. So making sure you just like them as a human, like that's super, super important. And then make sure you vibe with like what they offer, what are the things they do. Because I think there's a difference between, oh, I don't like, like what they are telling me to do is on alignment, or what they're telling to do is making me stretch or expand.
Yes.
There's a huge difference. So it's really tapping into your intuition, into your own self, and saying, okay, where's the truth in this?
Yep.
And finding the right coach. And maybe it looks like multiple coaches too. I have multiple coaches. When you find your dream team, we'll call it, your life changes drastically, like for all the better. So it's super, super important who you put in your corner, because like you'll sail in all the awesome ways. Okay, so last question. What advice would you give to other women entrepreneurs in living their most authentic selves in life and business?
Oof. Stop caring about the fucking algorithm and post your shit.
I love this so much.
That's my first bit of advice. Yes. Please, like, you guys, the weirder and more you can be, the more of the right people you are going to attract to you. Mm-hmm. And the more people that are also going to reject you because you are not their cup of tea. And that is totally awesome. That is so great, because that means that you get to move things forward, right? And along with that, I would say figure out, there's that adage of, and maybe you can help me with this if I don't like nail this, but it's like whatever you're really good at, what you're passionate about, and like what can make you money, that ultimately is what you would excel at as a business, right? So you got to be passionate about it. Like you do have to care and whatever that may be. So for me, it looks like helping people transform and self-heal. And that has to do with the energetic work that I do through, Reiki and meditation and breath work, but also obviously like lifestyle choices and nutrition, right? So, and it may evolve as time goes on, but at the end of the day, I know that I help people with personal transformation because I like to empower them. And so find that niche, like find that thing and stick to it. Don't change your formula every 5 seconds. Like you do have to have staying power if you want to be really good at business. Read books, listen to podcasts, find mentors that you trust that, have done it, and stick with it. Stick with it. And if something isn't, it's not to say if something isn't working, let's say a marketing launch of some kind, tweak what you have to, right? But like, don't get distracted by the shiny stuff that somebody else is doing. If you don't want to do a podcast, don't. Like, go hang out on TikTok if you love it, right? So stick with what works for you and don't worry about anybody else and just keep learning.
I love that advice. So tell us, what are your offers, like high terms? Like, how do people work with you? What does that look like? Where can people find you?
Yeah, so I'm most active on Instagram. I do have a new website that hopefully will be wrapped up and all good to go by the time this podcast is out. So that will be available for you guys. So you can find me easily on Instagram at Never Settle Life. I do have a podcast of my own if you want to check that out, the Never Settle Life podcast. And I offer one-on-one coaching. I offer group coaching, online courses. I do public speaking and workshops. So it's all virtual, and you can find that easily through my website or my Instagram.
Awesome. And I will definitely have show notes. And I know you're offering something special for our podcast listeners. So I'm so excited to share that with them. And yeah, definitely at the minimum, guys, like check out her podcast. It's fire. Like check it out. It's pretty cool. So learn more about Kim. I love it. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to teach us all the things. I love learning all the new things and sharing everything. Your light is so beautiful and bright. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Sam. This is awesome.
My pleasure. All right. Well, have a fabulous day. We will catch you later.
Bye.
It's offer time, my friends, and Kim today is so gracious in offering the Authentic Entrepreneur Podcast listeners 20% off the NSL 30-day kickstart when you use the code SHC. That's 20% off the Never Settle Lifestyle 30-day kickoff start when you use the code SHC, for Sam Hardesty Coaching. There is a link in the show notes, so be sure to check it out. That gets you the direct link to her Kickstart, 30-day Kickstart checkout. This is an awesome opportunity, guys. Hopefully you take it. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Authentic Entrepreneur Podcast. I hope in between the words of this episode, you found more of your authentic self. It would mean the world to me if you, 1, like this episode if you learned something new, 2, share this episode with a friend who you think needs to hear this, and lastly, 3, to follow and subscribe to this podcast. I want to hang out with you more. Don't forget to tag me on Instagram, send me a DM, wave hi, whatever floats your boat, all at Sam Hardesty Coaching. That's at Sam Hardesty Coaching on Instagram. And hey, look at you go, learning new things, becoming more self-aware and shit, absolutely crushing it, my friend. Thank you so much. I love you. And until next time, stay authentic.